Everything you believe about yourself is wrong. Not metaphorically wrong. Physically wrong. Provably, demonstrably, scientifically wrong. You think you are a thing. You think you are a noun. You think you are a solid, static object, sitting there watching this video, existing in the world like a chair exists, like a rock exists, like a building exists. But you are not a thing. You are not a noun. You are a verb. You are a process. You are an event happening right now in space-time. And when you truly understand what that means, when you really look at the atoms jiggling and wiggling inside of you at this very moment, something extraordinary happens. The fear of death changes. It does not disappear, perhaps, but it transforms into something else entirely. It transforms into awe. It transforms into a recognition of what you really are in this universe. This is not philosophy. This is physics. And the truth is far more beautiful than anything you have been told. Richard Feynman, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who could explain quantum electrodynamics to a freshman and make them feel like they understood it, spent his career illuminating the hidden machinery of reality. He had a gift, an almost supernatural ability, to strip away the fog of complicated mathematics and reveal the simple, stunning truth underneath. And one of the most profound truths Feynman ever explored was this. Most people completely misunderstand what they are made of. Not what they are made of chemically or biologically, but what they are made of fundamentally. At the deepest level of physical reality. Now, you see, we walk around with an intuitive picture of ourselves. We feel solid. We feel permanent. We feel like we are the same person we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. When we were children, we look in the mirror, and we see the same face, more or less. And we assume that the person looking back is a continuous, stable entity. But physics tells us something radically different. Physics tells us that you are not the atoms you are made of. You cannot be, because those atoms are constantly being replaced. Every single day, every single hour, atoms are flowing into you and out of you. You eat, you breathe, you drink, you take in new atoms, you exhale, you sweat, you shed skin cells, you push out old atoms. The turnover is constant and complete. The carbon in your brain right now, the phosphorus in your bones, the oxygen in your blood, it is all flowing through you like water through a sieve. Scientists estimate that over the course of roughly 7 to 10 years, nearly every atom in your body is exchanged for a new. The calcium that was in your skeleton a decade ago is probably in the soil somewhere now, or in a plant, or in another person entirely. So here is the question, the deeply unsettling question that physics forces us to ask. If the atoms are different, are you the same person you were 10 years ago? Let us really sit with this for a moment. Think about what you had for breakfast last week. Those atoms are now part of you. Literally, the carbon from your toast is now woven into your muscle tissue. The hydrogen and oxygen from your coffee are now circulating in your bloodstream. You are constantly absorbing the outside world and making it into yourself. And at the same time, you are constantly shedding yourself back into the world. Every breath you exhale contains atoms that were, moments ago, part of your lungs, your blood cells, your beating heart. When you lose weight, where do you think that mass goes? It goes into the air. You breathe yourself out into the atmosphere. This means something startling. The air you are breathing right now contains atoms that were once part of other people, not figuratively. Literally, the atmosphere is well mixed over centuries. Atoms that were once part of Leonardo da Vinci, Cleopatra, your great-great-grandmother, they are all mixed up in this thing together. We are not separate entities. We are like eddies in a river. The river flows, the eddies form, they swirl, they keep their shape for a while, and then they dissolve back into the river. But the river continues. So if you are not the atoms, what are you? Feynman would say, you are the pattern. You are the dance. You are the exquisitely choreographed arrangement of matter and energy that persists even as the physical stuff cycles through. Think of it this way. Imagine a wave crashing on the shore. If you look at that wave, you see a distinct shape, a form. moving across the water. It has identity. You can point at it and say, that wave, that one right there. But what is the wave actually made of? Water molecules. And what are those water molecules doing? They are not traveling horizontally with the wave. They are mostly moving up and down, oscillating in place. The wave is a pattern of motion that propagates through the water, but the water itself stays more or less where it is. The wave is real, but the wave is not the water. The wave is what the water is doing. You are a wave. You are what your atoms are doing. You are the pattern, not the stuff. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but what exactly is this pattern? What keeps it going? Why does the pattern persist while the atoms change? This is where we need to talk about something beautiful and profound. We need to talk about what Feynman called the most important hypothesis in all of biology, in all of physics. Everything is made of atoms, not just everything around you. Everything. The chair you are sitting on, the screen you are watching, the air you are breathing, your thoughts, your emotions, your memories. All of it is the behavior of atoms. Everything is made of atoms, little particles that move around in perpetual motion, attracting each other when they are a little way apart, repelling each other when they get too close. That is the fundamental picture. Atoms jiggling and wiggling, bouncing into each other, forming temporary bonds, breaking apart, reforming in new configurations. And what is life? Life is a particular kind of atomic arrangement that has the remarkable property of maintaining itself. Life is a pattern that resists dissolution. Life is atoms organized in such a way that they keep themselves organized. Your body is a machine in the most literal sense. It is a molecular machine that takes in raw materials, energy in the form of food and sunlight, and uses that energy to maintain its own structure. Your cells are constantly repairing themselves, copying themselves, rebuilding the proteins and membranes that make them work. Your DNA is a set of instructions, a blueprint that tells atoms how to arrange themselves into you. But here is the key insight. The instructions are what persist. The pattern is what persists. The specific atoms are just temporary residents, passing through the system. It is like a fountain. Think of a beautiful fountain in a plaza somewhere. Water shoots up from the center, arcs through the air, and falls back down into the basin. The shape of that fountain, the parabolic curves of the water jets, the spray of droplets catching the light, that shape is stable. You can come back tomorrow and the fountain looks the same. But it is not the same water. Not a single molecule of the water you see now would be there tomorrow. The water is constantly flowing, constantly being replaced. What persists is the pattern, the shape, the arrangement imposed on the water by the fountain's mechanism. You are the fountain, not the water. But here is where it gets interesting. And here is where we need to talk about the second law of thermodynamics. You have probably heard of entropy. Entropy is often described as disorder, or randomness, or the tendency of things to fall apart. But that is not quite right. Entropy is more subtle than that. Entropy is a measure of how many different microscopic arrangements of atoms could produce the same macroscopic state. A high entropy state is one that can be achieved by many, many different atomic arrangements. A low entropy state is one that can only be achieved by very few, very specific arrangements. Think about a deck of cards. If you shuffle a deck thoroughly, you will almost certainly end up with a disordered, random-looking arrangement. Why? Because there are vastly more random arrangements than ordered ones. There is only one arrangement, where all the cards are perfectly sorted by suit and rank. But there are billions upon billions of arrangements, where the cards are mixed up. So if you start with a sorted deck and shuffle, you will get a random deck. Not because of any law forcing randomness, but simply because random arrangements outnumber ordered ones by such an overwhelming margin that they are statistically inevitable. This is the second law of thermodynamics. Systems tend to move toward higher entropy, toward more probable configurations, simply because there are more of them to stumble into. Now, here's the puzzle. Life is low entropy. You are low entropy. Your body is an incredibly improbable arrangement of atoms. The chances of atoms randomly assembling themselves into a functioning human being are so small as to be effectively zero. You are like a perfectly sorted deck of cards in a universe that is constantly shuffling. So how do you exist? How do you maintain this extraordinarily improbable configuration? The answer is, you cheat. But you cheat in a very specific way, a way that does not actually violate the laws of physics. You eat. Food is concentrated energy. It is low entropy. Plants take sunlight, which is low entropy radiation from the sun, and use it to build ordered molecular structures like sugars and protein. When you eat those plants, or eat animals that ate those plants, you are taking in that order. You are importing low entropy into your system. And then what do? You use that order to repair your cells, to build your proteins, to keep the pattern holding tight. And in the process, you expel heat. You expel waste. You create disorder in your environment. You are like a whirlpool in a river. You maintain your ordered structure by pushing disorder outward, by increasing the entropy of everything around you. You pay the thermodynamic bill. But eventually, the machinery wears out. The copying errors in your DNA accumulate. The cellular repair mechanisms slow down. The thermodynamic bill comes due, and the shuffle takes over. So what is death in this picture? Death is not the destruction of atoms. We know that from the conservation of energy and the conservation of matter. You cannot destroy an atom. You can smash it, change its form, convert some of its mass into energy. But the stuff of the universe is constant. The amount of energy in the universe today is exactly the same as it was at the beginning. When you die, you do not vanish. The carbon in your body does not pop out of existence. Merely, the energy that powers your heart does not dissolve into nothingness. When Shostians, death is simply when the dance stops. It is when the pattern dissolves. Why does it dissolve? Because the pattern requires constant maintenance. It requires energy. It requires the molecular machinery of life to keep working, to keep importing order and exporting disorder. And when that machinery fails, when the heart stops pumping and the brain stops firing and the cells stop repairing, the atoms stop following the strict instructions of your DNA. They return to the wild, chaotic jiggling of the inanimate universe. It is like the wave finally reaching the shore and breaking apart. The water is still there. 7. Every molecule is accounted for. But the pattern, the shape, the waveness, that is gone. Or think of it this way. Think of a sound. New. If you clap your hands, a sound wave travels through the air. You hear the clap, then silence. Where did the sound go? Did it vanish? The energy of the sound spread out. It heated up the air molecules just a tiny, tiny bit. The motion was distributed. The organized clap became disorganized heat. But the energy is still there. It is all still there, just no longer organized into a sound. When your song ends, the energy is distributed back into the great choir of the universe. There is a beautiful, though slightly morbid, realization here. When you die, the biological pattern breaks down. Entropy wins locally. The ordered arrangement of your brain scatters. But the atoms, they go on. They go into the soil. They go into the air. They become part of a flower. They become part of a tree. They might become part of another person. It is a constant recycling, a constant transformation. The atoms that are you today will be something else tomorrow. They will participate in other patterns, other dances, other forms of organization. And the reverse is also true. The atoms that are you today came from somewhere else. The carbon in your body was forged in the heart of a dying star billions of years ago. Think about that. Really think about it. Hydrogen, the simplest element, was created in the Big Bang. But everything heavier, everything else, was made in stars. Stars are nuclear furnaces. They take hydrogen atoms and squeeze them together, fusing them, building heavier and heavier elements. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, iron, all the elements that make up your body. They were all created in the cores of stars that lived and died long before our sun existed. And then, those stars exploded. Supernovae, tremendous violent catastrophes, blasting these new heavy atoms out into the cosmos. And then gravity pulled them together again. They formed a cloud. The cloud condensed. It formed a new star, our sun. It formed planets, our Earth. And out of that dust, out of that debris of dead stars, life emerged. So when you look at yourself, you are not just looking at a person. No, you are looking at stardust that has temporarily arranged itself into a pattern capable of contemplating its own existence. You are the universe examining itself. And when you die, the stardust returns to the pool. It joins the great cycle again. It will become part of other patterns, other configurations, other forms of complexity. Nothing is lost. Everything is transformed. But here is where it gets even more interesting. Everything we have discussed so far is powerful, but it still operates within our everyday intuition about time. We have been talking as if the past is gone. The future has not happened yet, and the only thing that is real is now. But that intuition is wrong. What? Just as wrong as our intuition about being a static thing. When we look at the equations of physics, when we look at Einstein's relativity, which has been tested and proven over and over again, to extraordinary precision, we find something astonishing. The past is not gone. The future is not unreal. They all exist. They are all laid out in a four-dimensional structure that physicists call spacetime. This is difficult to visualize, so let us try a thought experiment. Imagine you are on a train, looking out the window. You see a cow in a field. Then the train moves and you see a house. Then a tree. Then a lake. Now, from your perspective, you experience those things one after another. The cow, then the house, then the tree, then the lake. They seem to happen in sequence. But here is the question. When you were looking at the house, did the cow still exist? Of course it did. You just were not looking at it anymore. The cow did not vanish when you turned your attention to the house. It was still back there in the field, doing cow things, completely oblivious to your gaze. Einstein showed that time works the same way. You and not me. The different moments of time are like different locations along the train's path. They all exist. They are all real. Your consciousness is like your gaze out the window. It can only focus on one slice at a time. But that does not mean the other slices are not there. This is called the block universe, or sometimes the eternalist view of time. In this picture, the universe is not a three-dimensional space that evolves through time. The universe is a four-dimensional block of space-time, with time as just another dimension, like length or width or height. Everything that has ever happened and everything that will ever happen is already there, laid out in the four-dimensional map. Stop. But think about that for a moment. If this picture is correct, and the physics strongly suggests it is, then your life is not a series of events that flicker into existence and then vanish. Your life is a permanent structure in the four-dimensional fabric of reality. Think of it like this. Imagine a loaf of bread. The loaf has a beginning and an end. If you slice it, each slice is a different cross-section of the loaf. But the whole loaf exists. The slices are not created and destroyed as you cut through it. They were always there, parts of the whole. Your life is like a slice of the loaf of space-time. You have a beginning, your birth. You have an end, your death. But between those boundaries you exist. You are real. You are a permanent thread woven into the cosmic tapestry. From the perspective of physics, the you that is alive right now is just as real as the you that was a baby, and just as real as the you that will be old. The fact that your consciousness is focused on this particular slice right now is just a detail of how you process information. It says nothing about the fundamental reality of the other slices. So death is not a deletion. No. Death is a boundary. It is the edge of your pattern in the time direction. Just as you have a boundary in space, your skin, you have a boundary in time. You do not go on forever in space. You are not infinite, and you do not go on forever in time. You are not eternal. But within those boundaries you are absolutely real, and you are absolutely permanent. You cannot be erased. The events of your life, the moments you experienced, the joy and the sorrow and the wonder and the boredom, they are all there in the block. They are all real. They do not cease to exist just because your consciousness has moved on to the next slice. Think about that moment. Whatever it was, the perfect moment in your life. Maybe it was holding your child for the first time. Maybe it was falling in love. Maybe it was standing on a mountaintop watching the sunset. Maybe it was just a quiet afternoon with nothing special happening. But somehow, for some reason, you were completely at peace. That moment is still there. It is still real. It is a coordinate in space-time, as permanent and indestructible as a point on a map. The traveler has passed that point, yes, but the point remains. So why are we afraid of death? We are afraid because we are attached to the self. We are attached to the ego, the little voice in the head that says, I am important, I am separate, I must survive. That voice is a biological trick. It is a necessary illusion for survival. If you did not have that voice, you would not eat. You would not run from predators. You would not protect your children. You would not pass on your genes. Evolution gave you the illusion of separation so that you would protect the pattern. The fear of death is a feature, not a bug. It keeps you alive. It keeps you reproducing. It keeps the pattern going. But physics tells us the separation is an illusion. The boundaries between you and the environment are arbitrary. You are constantly exchanging matter and energy with the world. You are continuous with the universe. There is no hard line where you stop and everything else begins. You are not a thing in the universe. You are what the universe is doing at this particular place in this particular time. You are a localized vibration of the quantum fields that underlie all of reality. When you realize this, really realize it, something shifts. The fear does not necessarily go away. We are biological creatures, and biology has its imperatives. But the fear changes character. It becomes less about the horror of non-existence, and more about the sadness of boundaries. The same kind of sadness you feel when a beautiful piece of music ends, or when a wonderful vacation is over. Endings are sad, but they are not catastrophes. They are just edges. And here is another perspective that might seem counterintuitive at first, but becomes obvious once you think about it. Death is necessary, not just in a spiritual or poetic sense, in a physical sense. If nothing ever died, nothing new could ever be born. If the patterns never dissolved, the atoms would be locked in prison. They could never become a new star, a new flower, a new baby. The universe recycles. It has to. There is only so much matter and energy, and it must be reused. Your death is not just an ending. It is a liberation, a release. The atoms that were briefly, you become available for other adventures. In some sense, the price of life is death. You get to participate in this extraordinary dance of matter and energy, this improbable pattern of organization that can feel joy and wonder and love, but only because the dance is temporary. Only because the atoms will eventually be free to dance again in other forms. Death is the price we pay for the privilege of life. So where does this leave us? Not with the conventional immortality of religion, the personal continuation of consciousness beyond death. Physics gives us no evidence for that, and Feynman was always careful to distinguish between what we know and what we hope. But physics does give us something. It gives us a different kind of immortality, a structural immortality. Your life is a permanent feature of space-time. The events you experienced are real and indestructible. The pattern that was you, even though it dissolves, contributed to the ongoing transformation of the universe. Your atoms will go on to be part of countless other patterns. Your influence on the world, the words you spoke, the people you loved, the things you made, they all ripple outward, changing the trajectory of countless other processes. You are not just a wave. You are a wave that affected every other wave in the ocean. And there is the continuity of matter and energy. The carbon in your body was forged in the hearts of ancient stars. It will go on, after you, to be part of other structures, other forms, perhaps other kinds of light. You are a temporary custodian of Stardust, and there is the continuity of information. In a sense, the pattern that was you was not random. It was the result of billions of years of evolution, the accumulated wisdom of countless generations encoded in your DNA. And if you have children, or if you teach, or if you create, you pass on some of that pattern. Not the atoms, but the information. This is not the immortality we dream of. We dream of personal continuation, of waking up in some afterlife with our memories intact and our personalities preserved. Physics does not offer that. But what physics offers is, in some ways, more profound. It offers connection. It offers continuity. It offers the recognition that you were never separate from the universe in the first place. What's empty? Feynman once said that science does not diminish wonder. It amplifies it. When you learn that you are made of atoms that were forged in stars, you do not feel smaller. You feel connected to something vast and ancient and magnificent. When you learn that your identity is a pattern rather than a thing, you do not feel less real. You feel part of a dynamic process that is far more interesting than mere static existence. When you learn that your life is a permanent coordinate in the four-dimensional structure of spacetime, you do not feel insignificant. You feel like a necessary thread in a tapestry of unimaginable complexity and beauty. This is the gift that physics offers. Not comfort exactly, not the easy reassurance of a fairy tale, but something better, understanding. And with understanding comes a kind of peace. Not the peace of certainty, but the peace of clarity. The peace of seeing things as they really are, even if what they really are is strange and counterintuitive and difficult to accept. So here is the invitation. The next time you feel the fear of death, the cold grip of mortality, try this. Try thinking about what you actually are. You are not a thing. You are a process. You are atoms jiggling and wiggling in an exquisite dance of organization. You are not separate from the universe. You are what the universe is doing here and now. You are a localized eddy in the cosmic flow. You are not temporary in the way you think. Your life is a permanent structure in space-time, as real as any mountain, as indestructible as mathematics. And you are made of stardust. Literally. The carbon in your cells was cooked in the nuclear furnace of a star that died before our sun was born. And it will go on, after you, to be part of other stars, other worlds, perhaps other minds. This does not make death easy. Nothing makes death easy. We are biological creatures with biological imperatives, and the fear of non-existence is wired deep into our nervous system. But understanding changes the character of the fear. It transforms terror into awe. It transforms dread into wonder. And that transformation, that shift from fear to awe, is perhaps the greatest gift that physics can give us. Feynman understood this. He spent his entire career marveling at the machinery of reality, taking joy in the details of how things work, celebrating the beautiful complexity of the universe. And he knew that understanding does not cheapen existence. It enriches it. When you know what you really are, when you see the atomic ballet playing out inside you, when you grasp your place in the cosmic story, everything becomes more precious, not less. No, because you are not just a brief flicker of consciousness in an indifferent void. You are a pattern of unimaginable complexity. You are a temporary custodian of ancient matter. You are a permanent fixture in the eternal structure of space-time. You are stardust contemplating the stars. And that is not a small thing. That is not a trivial thing. That is perhaps the most remarkable thing in the entire universe. We are the universe examining itself. We are matter trying to understand matter. We are the cosmos becoming conscious. And when the pattern dissolves, when the wave breaks on the shore, when the song ends, the energy returns to the great choir. But the song was real. The song is still real somewhere in the block forever. That is what physics tells us. That is what the equations reveal when you look at them with clear eyes. Not a fairy tale, but something better. The truth.